Zach, we often make the joke that a lot can change in 24 hours, which is hard to believe in this sport where it's all about stretching it out and looking at the big picture all the time. And yet, still, so much can change in 24 hours. If you go back after game one on Saturday, when the Guardians shifted their bullpen around, and that looked like a fun topic for us to discuss, but they had taken the first game of a doubleheader against Boston. They had a good series against New York. It was just setting up to be what was looking to be a good week. And then, of course, they dropped the second half of the doubleheader. Okay, I can deal with that. And then Sunday, ugh, what a bunch of junk that was from the play on the field and some of the things that happened apparently in the stands. It was ugly from really minute number one in that game. So now I feel completely different. We go from them being 15-10 and seeming like everything is great, and we have some fun things to discuss. Now they're 15-12. They had an ugly finale against Boston. I'm just kind of feeling funky.
Even though Austin Hedges likes to boast about the fact that prior to Sunday, he owns a career 3.18 ERA, 2 runs in 5 2/3 innings. You know what it means when you look up at the end of a game, at the end of a week, and he's on the mound, right? So that's a picture's worth 1,000 words, and Hedges pumping 55-mile-an-hour changeup thingies toward the plate is all you need to know.
It was just a real disgusting game, and not in the way the Guardians like to play. We don't focus too much on just a single game, and we shouldn't, but this one just sticks with me because we just gave them a lot of credit. I think it was on the Patreon show. We were talking about how clean this team wants to play and fundamentally sound. They got to outsmart other teams, be more prepared. I think it hurts more. Rocchio, that just continues, and him being unable to catch just a casual throw in from the outfield, which leads to an extra base. That's aggravating enough. Then here's Carlos Santana, who does the thing that leads to a run where he's on the team because he plays great defense. That's really why they brought him back. They wanted that stability at first base in addition to maybe just being a little bit better than an average bat. And that just set the tone for the rest of the day. I don't know. A game like this you should be able to flush it, but recording just minutes after you got home from the ballpark, so I haven't had a chance to flush it yet, and I'm just aggravated by 4 errors and just unclean baseball. I don't dig it. That's inexcusable for this team. Can't win that way.
Okay. Would you rather talk about then what new bobbleheads I purchased at the Greenie Sports Collectors Convention this weekend?
Why do you want to just change the subject like that? You think it's just that easy to flush?
It's
bad
one
defense?
of 162, and by the time many people will listen to or watch this, and thank you for joining us on the Selby's Godcast, whether you're on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you can find your podcasts. God, I'll do your job for you. There'll probably be 2-3 games past the 13-3 loss. So, you can't dwell too much on one, just like you can't dwell too much on a nice win. And guess what? They went 2-1 against the Yankees. They went 1-2 against the Red Sox. So it cancels it out and makes this week pointless. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. You say so much can change in 24 hours. Nothing changed in a whole week.
I guess you could make that case. I don't know. It's tough to flush this one. Some of it, like Nolan Jones, which that doesn't even go down as an error, but he loses a ball in the sun. That happens in a day like this. I think some of the Rocchio thing is something that is bothersome to me because once again, he proves capable of making great plays, and it's the things that just anybody should be able to go pick up a glove and go play shortstop and do these things. It's those things that he struggles with, and this is a year where so much, what year isn't important for this middle infield when there's so many prospects and so much to get through, but this is a year where he's got to be taking a step forward. These things can't keep continuing, and I want to just harp on one play, but it goes beyond that. It's like I don't know if it's a awareness thing. I don't know if it's a losing just for a moment, just where you're at on the field. I don't know what it is with him, but it just continues, and it can't continue for him.
Some players, it's youth and inexperience. Some players are just like that. So the question with him is this just because he's 24 years old, or is this just who he is? And I think that's going to be a question. That he is one of the players who you're banking on showing signs of development across the board, and that's part of it. Part of it is being an instinctually advantaged player. Part of it is making the right plays at the right times. And when you do, because everybody makes mistakes, humans make errors. That's just what happens. But are you doing it at a time when it is absolutely critical and costly for the team? Or are you doing it at the end of a 13-3 loss when it doesn't matter and no one will think twice about it? That's the question. I think the bigger picture here is, another week has passed and I still have no idea really what to make of this team. There are some days, early in the week, it looked like this team was rolling. It looked like, you know what? They can hang with the Yankees. I have no doubts about that. And if you can hang with the Yankees, you can hang with anybody in the American League. And then against the Red Sox, they just looked like they lost to a much better team the last two games of that series. But they won the first. So, it's not... I want to be able to make a conclusion about something, and then more stuff happens that goes against the conclusion I want to draw. The Red Sox were my pick to win the American League, by the way, at the beginning of the season. So to me, I want to say, this is a really good team that you just lost 2 or 3 to. And a 3-3 week against the Yankees and Red Sox is nothing to hang your hat on. But I understand your point of this looked more like the Padres and Angels series, and stay away from that brand of baseball.
I wouldn't have even been bothered that much if they just got beat in a normal game, but just the manner in which they lost, it just felt funky for me. I just can't shake it. But you wake up tomorrow, you hopefully feel better. The thing that doesn't allow me to do that quite yet is it felt like we were getting, I don't want to say closer to an answer, because I don't think 3 to 4 weeks to begin a season is an answer on anybody that has their status up in the air. But Gabriel Arias is emerging as a guy that's helping them win games right now. And then, now he's dealing with a hip issue, left hip irritation, I believe they termed it. So there's that. Then another guy who's like the next line of defense or depth or whatever you want to call it for the middle infield, a guy that could maybe save you from Brian Rocchio reps in the future if you want to shift Gabriel Arias somewhere else. Juan Brito, who we've been talking about for 3 years now. God, now he's got a right thumb sprain that's taking him off the map for 8 to 12 weeks. And so 2 guys that I felt like, okay, well, if you aren't getting the answer on Rocchio that you like, at least you've got Arias playing well. At least you've got Brito. Eventually he's going to step up here and get his opportunity. Nope, that's not going to happen for either one of those guys. So get ready to speak Daniel Schneemann for a little bit, I guess. I don't know.
It's tough. I was just on here a week ago saying I'm ready to see Brito, and now we won't see him until July, maybe. That's tough. It's also tough because, Travis Bazzana, there was an order of operations. There was a hierarchy here, and Bazzana had to wait behind Brito and Arias and Martinez maybe, and all of a sudden he's he could skip a guy or two, but he's got a lot.
Play well.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is he's got to hit Double-A pitching and then hit Triple-A pitching, and it just shows you how quickly, as you always say, these things resolve themselves. But I don't know. This team, it feels like we were just saying Logan Allen and Ben Lively have really picked up the slack in the rotation when Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams were struggling. And then Bybee and Williams pitched well, and Lively and Allen not so much. And Luis Ortiz had pitched really well, and it's oh my God, this guy's unlocked this great arsenal, and he's strikeout artist now, and then he lays an egg. So it's inconsistencies. And if you think about what you projected for this team this season, I think a lot of people figured they'd go somewhere between 80 and 88 wins. Is that a fair range to say?
That's a big range. 80 to 88.
But they looked like a team that was an average to a little above average team, right? Or average to above average. And they're 15-12, which fits that. And in those 27 games, it's been average to sometimes looking above average, sometimes looking very much below. It's been all over the map. So when you project them to be in the 80s, there's going to be a lot of inconsistency. And that's what we've seen.
I think part of it is why I'm frustrated after this game in particular, and it would be an easy one to flush because this team doesn't usually shoot themselves in the foot like they did on Sunday against Boston. And it even made it tough to really evaluate that Logan Allen start because he was just like one thing after another, and nobody's making plays, and it's adding up more pitches, and you don't want to be doing that against anybody, especially a team with some great players like Boston. But I felt like I was at a place even 24 hours ago where I could say glowing things about this team. I mean, a 15-10 start for
You
this
still
team.
can.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what it's making it. I feel like I'm being a little bit unfair this afternoon in my evaluation because 24 hours ago I was ready to come on here and say, look at where this team's at. Despite what you just said about this rotation, no one has really established their full direction yet this year. I don't feel like they've played their best baseball, and if they could get off to a 15-10 start, having not really played their best yet, that feels really good about what I think their future is going to look like. Now, since that happened, there's now another guy that's been hitting well, like Arias. That's, I don't know, even if it takes a couple of days for him to get back to full health or more, or maybe it's a lingering thing. But it's just like you go from, I felt like I was ready to come on here and say all sorts of positive things about what they've established about themselves so far this year, and it's just a couple of games against Boston. That's totally unfair for me to feel that way. But yet, I don't know, something about those two losses, especially playing sloppy on Sunday, just kind of made it harder for me to want to make those points this afternoon.
I think I can safely say Stephen Kwan and Cade Smith are really, really good. And that's it. And Hunter Gaddis. Give Hunter Gaddis credit. The guy hasn't allowed a run yet. Other than that, I don't know anything. It was great to see Nolan Jones hit one over the fence finally, and maybe that can settle him down a little bit now, and all that hard contact can result in better stuff. I love that we're on YouTube right now what are you doing? And
trying to kill a ground hum in my mic, that's all. I think I did it.
I don't know what to make. You know, we've talked a little bit about Carlos Santana. Like, is this a slow start, or is he just 39 years old playing like a 39-year-old? Don't know. Bo Naylor, still waiting for him to show some consistency at the plate. Rocchio, again, like, just doesn't look like it's there in the batter's box. I'm not sure. Noel looks lost. Like, there are so many more things going wrong. Young guys not taking the steps forward yet. And then that team that just boat raced you for 2 games, like, you still have a better record than the Red Sox. So there's something encouraging to draw, because I think that some of this should be taken care of just by regression, positive regression. Now, you can't sit around waiting for that forever. Like I remember thinking the same thing in 2012. That team was hovering around 500, and you're like, oh yeah, but last year was the year they finally burst onto the scene, and this is the year they're going to take a step forward. And then they went 5-24 in August. And we learned who the real version of that team was. In 2023, the same thing. You know, they were treading water all season. They got to the trade deadline. They said, we don't think that there's going to be an upswing here. So they traded some guys, and that was that. So I don't know what the real version of this team is. Usually I'd say, like, you're 15-12 and not much has gone right, and you haven't played great baseball. That's a good sign. But you do need to actually take steps to ensure that that's the case. You can't just sit there being like, oh, Noel will be fine. He'll still end the season with 20 home runs.
Yeah, eventually, you do need to eventually take that step forward, and we're waiting for that. I mean, the answer could eventually be that they're just slightly better than an average club. I would believe that. I mean, that's, of all the outcomes you could present in front of me, I would say that's a believable one, that this team is just a little bit better than the rest of the teams. As we said, they're better than those teams, but we don't know if they're better than the teams. And I was hoping that this week could maybe help answer that. And after the Yankees series, I thought maybe they are on par with some of these other clubs. And I know the American League is not what the National League is sort of perceived to be, but that's fine because you only got to get through the gauntlet of the American League and then take down one National League team when we're talking about the end of the season and postseason. You brought up.
You're talking about like November 2nd right now?
That's
you just watched them lose by 10, and you're talking about who they might have to face in the World
But that's
Series.
the beauty of the American League. Like anybody could
Yeah.
have a stretch where they just play like crap and still go win the American League.
The funny thing is, by the way, the fans were asking us earlier in the week. They were excited about the next episode, and they were saying, "Oh, TJ's got to play the club music, and you got to play the schedule game, and everything's great." And now it's
Yeah, see, you're here just watching the free shows. You don't get the whole picture. You got to come to Patreon, because then you get the fun after Yankee series where we're all just having a joyful time.
I did meet. I met a
back here
few
and
fans this
all mad,
weekend.
angry.
I met a few avid listeners of our free episodes here, our Patreon episodes. I won't name names. One of them has everybody in our Discord convinced that he's Chris Antonetti, and I got to meet the legend himself.
Chris Antonetti. It was cool that he would show up. Finally admit who he was.
Can you imagine Chris Antonetti asked me to meet him at a concession stand to buy him a Pepsi and take a selfie with him?
After this weekend of guys' phone numbers leaking and getting calls from fake GMs, and yeah, I believe pretty much anything at this point. It's one of the things I actually appreciate about our show. We often say we don't tell you how to feel, and one of the reasons why we say we don't tell you how to feel is because this show is in real time showing you how we feel. Like, we work through these emotions. We don't come on here with the hottest of takes and say, this is the way that it is and nothing will ever change. No, I think we leave the door open that we could be wrong. Sometimes we're right. But we work through this in real time, just like I think anybody else would be sitting here working through it in real time. But despite the fact that we are not the biggest of hot takers, and people rip us for it because even in our hot take episodes, we're not that scorching hot, I've got one for you. I think the Nolan Jones home run in a game that's throwaway, you lose by 10, sends him on a nice little home run binge. I think you're going to see him hit like 3 in a week. I think
His at-bats have looked better, haven't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, he's always a patient hitter, but I feel like he's been the strikeouts have toned down a little bit the last couple of weeks, and you could tell he's zeroed in on, like, I know what pitches I can damage and what pitches get me in trouble, and I think being more selective is helping him. You know, the numbers are slowly creeping up, but I'm with you. I think he's the tools. You see the tools. The tools are all there. There was a ball in Pittsburgh that he kind of misplayed, and it didn't really result in anything, but he quickly corralled it and fired like the strongest throw I've ever seen back into the infield. And it's like, okay, you can be a really good outfielder. We've seen it. And 2 years ago, he had 19 outfield assists, right? And then last year, he had 4 errors in the Rockies' first 5 games. So this is what I mean. Development, young players trying to figure it out. And then offensively, it's the same thing. I mean, we've cited the metrics all along. He's making harder contact than like almost anybody. And he's being patient. He's not chasing all that much. And like, these are good things. You should get rewarded at some point. So yeah, to see him finally get one over the fence, that should be good. And I feel bad. I don't want to like slam Jhonkensy Noel because I think it's a difficult role that he's in for a young player just facing lefties on occasion or getting a pinch hit here and there to find a rhythm. And I wonder if he's got to go down to AAA at some point and figure it out there. But it's night and day to me. I mean, like if like I would even argue Jones, you don't even necessarily need to sit him against all lefties. If you think it would help Jones just to get more at bats, I'd consider that. So he's just looked a lot better. Whereas Noel, like, I don't know.
And saying that, I was happy to see him get one over the fence too.
Of course, I just. You still see the issues that are going to plague him if he doesn't pan out. The issues that are going to be his downfall when he's chasing sliders in the other batter's box, like, you're still seeing that. And
well, I think a player like that is fun when you can have someone in this role where you're just a guy off the bench. It's a lottery ticket. You're bringing him up here to maybe hit a 3-run home run, and it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it changes your entire game. You win a game because of that, or at least get you back into one. And the bet to fully take advantage of a player that can be as streaky as him, I think you need to play him a lot. You need bulk to be able to get him on the streak where he goes on fire. But I will say, I was really disappointed that he finally gets one over the fence and then he's back on the bench the next day. I know it didn't make sense just based on righty lefty sort of thing, but I just felt like, man, that would be a great game to get him back in the lineup. Just let him continue to see more pitches, and he did eventually get in, but I just feel like you're trying to spark all of these guys as best you can with as few plate appearances as maybe they're allotting them at this point. If he shows some signs of life, let him get back in there, because I think Noel is a guy, you even saw it in the postseason, after he hit that home run against the Yankees, his next few at-bats were just like everyone, he looked like he was a mountain, like just ready to do it again. There was one where he almost did it again with the next game, I think. He hit one to the track, or it was pretty close, and the camera zoomed in on it like it was headed for Mars, and it didn't quite get that far.
Like Venus was visible in the air that night.
It might have been. So I was really disappointed that he wasn't in there today. I would have tried to just spark that to life.
I think the thing that's tough for me with Noel is he's got 2 walks this season. So it's like, you know what you're getting. I'm with you. If the role for him is, hey, we need a 3-run homer off the bench in this situation, and you're the pinch hitter who might be able to do it, fine. But if you're still trying to figure out, can this guy be someone you want to give 400 at-bats to? This is a tough way to go about it. That's all. It's a tough way to go about it for someone with his profile, is, I guess, what I want to say. Like, I'm with you. Like, yeah, he hits that home run on Saturday, and it's like, there it is. Same thing with Noel. But at least I feel like Noel has had good at-bats. And I feel like Jones has had good at-bats, and he's like, he looks like someone who's on the verge of a breakout. And with Noel, it's like, I don't know. It's tough for him to get in a groove, I think.
I'm not saying sit Nolan or sit Noel. Sorry.
You could sit Santana.
Nolan Jones to get Noel in there. I'm saying I want them both in the lineup. Santana is one you could sit. I mean, the bat is not doing a lot here. I know he got on base 2 times in the finale, so some credit there for getting on base. That's what you do. But if you ever have any brain farts defensively and you're not being a ton offensively, we talked about this at length in our last Patreon show, so we don't really need to go too much into that again. But this is always going to be the problem with Carlos Santana, even when he was at his best outside of like the one really good year he had. The best of Carlos Santana is still a guy that's just solidly above average. And yeah, he can get hot, but his hot is not the kind of hot that carries a club for a week and a half. That's not really who he is. He's best when he is the guy that's good defensively and hits like 6th in your lineup. And they signed him. They brought him here. They put him in the middle of the lineup. The best of Santana when he's nearing 40 is a guy that's like a 5 to 10% above league average. That's not, I mean, it's better than an 80, but I think you're asking a lot of a guy that's not what he is anymore.
And I think a big thing for this team is just the middle of the order is not producing. You know, whether it's Santana, the right field platoon, you know, Arias has been good, but whoever's been in that, you know, second base, center field mix it's been rough. Obviously, Bo Naylor has not really hit. Rocchio hasn't hit. I mean, honestly, it's like the bottom 2/3. Although they've, like, wherever Arias has been and Martinez has been, those 2 guys have been great. But everybody else, it's tough. And you know, Lane Thomas will come back at some point. You would think that he can only go up from where he's been. But they, you know, it's the entire team. It's a matter of just consistency. And I think some guys will get there and some guys won't, but we're just sitting here waiting to figure out who that is, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, while the Arias one is ill-timed because he's swinging such a good bat right now and has been such a solid contributor offensively and defensively, the Lane Thomas one almost feels like a saving grace. Like there's some silver lining here. Certainly you'd rather just him be like playoff Lane Thomas. But when he's not swinging the bat well, what it's at least doing, it's letting Angel Martinez play and giving you more of an answer on what sort of role is he best in. Right now, you're keeping his bat in the lineup because he's contributing. But it's also, like, it's kept him in the lineup, and it's also allowed Nolan Jones time to get to where we think he's going to get to with him swinging the bat the way that he is. If Lane Thomas was still here and needing to play, somebody would be losing playing time, and it's almost like this has been a benefit to both Nolan Jones and Angel Martinez, because when Lane is finally ready to come back here soon, you'll have more answers on what else is going on in your roster, and then you could better use Lane Thomas for whatever he needs to be.
And maybe it's Noel who goes to AAA at that point to play every day. I don't know. Those things take care of themselves. Maybe it's Will Wilson. Maybe it's who knows. But they doesn't it feel like they're missing a bat? And I don't just mean Lane Thomas. Doesn't it feel like they're
since 2010,
since the dawn of time?
Yeah, always one short. Who could have predicted? Who would have ever thought? At least they didn't trade one of them away in the offseason. And
that's true. Is Straw still hitting? I haven't looked it up.
I'm not going to reference any of Josh Naylor's numbers at this point. The people in our Twitter mentions have done enough
Straw's
of that.
Got a 744 OPS.
Could use that at this point. This roster is going to change, not just in the coming days, but the coming weeks too, and maybe even like a month from now. Like from Lane Thomas's eventual return and whatever's going on with Arias. Slade Ciccone, remember him? Mentioning Josh Naylor. Apparently threw a bullpen looking really good. I mean, that's when the manager doesn't say.
Have you ever heard of a pitcher throwing a bullpen and they're like, "Oh, he just didn't have it today."
He was awful. It went terrible. I don't know, but apparently he looked really good. And then there's Shane Bieber and David Fry, who apparently are getting pretty close. Like that felt like a forever and a day away. When we first started this year, it was like, oh, yeah, Bieber will be back, but that's like so far away. David Fry, yeah. God, I can't even imagine that far into the future. And now both of those guys are nearing like actual game action, which is incredible to me.
Yeah, I mean, well, their target for Fry was always right around like early June. Bieber has always kept it vague because he's Bieber. But he had said mid-season was the target, and that you have to go by how you feel. Obviously, they had a baby, so like he was able to take a mini break in there, and so I think you're right. Like it's not even just those guys, and you're gonna have to figure out what role does Fry occupy. He can only be a DH this year, and he's a right-handed bat, so. Who does that take playing time away from? Maybe Noel, maybe Santana, Manzardo. A lot of questions there. It's also the bullpen. Like Nick Enright is in Columbus, so next time you need a reliever, he's an option. You're going to get Franco Alamon back. Eric Sabrowski was moved to the 60-day, but like he's not. You hope. Last I heard, I know he was targeting at some point in May. Maybe that's June, but he's an option at some point. Who am I forgetting? Andrew Walters.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of players, and I think the Guardians, I think a lot of teams look at this as you're surviving 162 games, and you hope more. So, like I know Sabrowski was saying, I'm okay missing April if it means I can be pitching in September and October. And I think a lot of guys feel that way. And, Shane Bieber obviously has a lot on the line, just improving that he could be healthy and playing for a new contract. And so he wants to look good, but also the more starts he's able to make, the better for him too, and the better for the Guardians. So you're going to see the roster evolve, and I think that's why it's important to get answers early, and that doesn't mean immediately. You need to give guys enough time, but you get answers, you move on to new guys, and you go from there. And by the end of it, you hope that you have a roster that is your peak roster when it matters most. But getting to that peak roster takes time and evaluation. And so, yeah, we'll see what this looks like. I mean, like Burrito is going to be out for a while, but that doesn't I would still bet on him making his debut at some point in 2025. Yeah. Chase DeLauder, same thing. How quickly we forget about him, right? So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I'm with you. I think the names you'll see on September 1st are going to look a lot different than the names you saw on April 1st.
And I always have faith, because they do it every year, in their ability to find better answers as the year unfolds. And so I'll just try to use like what I was saying with Lane Thomas, try to find some silver linings here. You're getting more of a chance now to have a better opinion on Brian Rocchio in the next several weeks, so that by the time you get to the middle of June, you should have a much better indication than you certainly have today. And Gabriel Arias, is this going to continue, or is he a part of your long-term plans? All this stuff is going to be answered, or at least give you a better chance to have a more informed opinion every single day. As far as the bullpen goes, I wouldn't be surprised if they make some more moves for this Minnesota Twin. I mean, you can only rely on, can Hedges go back-to-back days? You can only rely so much on his ability to mop
Remember
up
when
a
David
ninth
Fry
inning.
went 4? That doesn't get talked about
And
enough.
And then had to have surgery.
Makes you think.
Pitchers, you never know.
By the time you listen to this podcast, you could very well have an answer on Tristan McKenzie as well. It's another name to throw in the ring here.
Sure. But it really, none of this matters when you don't have the 7th, 8th, and ninth inning figured out. The good thing is, as many people pointed to me on Twitter, I made the joke about the quarterback room at the Browns and the closer room with the Guardians. But as a few people pointed out, where there's the old saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. In baseball, if you have 3 or 4 closers, you have 3 or 4 closers. Like, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing to have a lot of guys.
As long as the closer is good enough to be a closer, I would argue, Joe Borowski, Rafael Betancourt was that a controversy, or did everybody realize that Betancourt was the better pitcher?
Yeah, way beyond their time. They were see, Cleveland always with the bullpen. Go back to 2016. No, go back to Borowski and Betancourt. It was always the better guy occupying that fireman role.
Remember obviously the John Rocker, Bob Wickman wars of 2001?
Yeah. Should have just kept Clase. So it makes it a lot easier when you have Cade Smith. That
Jose Mason, Mike Jackson. I'm sorry, I can't stop.
God, can we move on, please? You're the one before the show says, hey, let's try to keep it short. And then here you are mentioning Mesa and Mike Jackson.
Why would I would never say that. Keep it short. What?
Life happens for all of us.
I want to entertain our listeners as long as we can.
Hey, life happens. I don't remember what I was going to say. But when you have a Cade Smith that you can plug anywhere, it makes it easier to work out whatever you got to so that you can get to whatever the end goal needs to be. In the case of the Guardians, it's been votes saying our goal is for Emmanuel Clase to be the closer, and we're just trying to get that back to where it needs to be. And in the meantime, that means we have to switch some roles around. We trust Cade Smith to do it. And so it was at least interesting that they went about that way. But it's so odd how we view the closer role as being more important. But at the end of the day, Clase still had to come in a close 8th inning. The only difference here is there's a safety net of a guy that maybe you perceive in the moment to be a better pitcher looming behind him to save him. Whereas when you flip that around, you've used all your better pitchers, and then here comes Clase, and there's not anybody coming out of the bullpen that you believe to be better than him to save the day.
So, as we sit here now, I think everything makes sense. Clase revealed that he's had shoulder soreness on and off since spring training. Oh, okay. And having not pitched for a while and having struggled for most of the season, it makes sense if they're like, hey, we want you to be healthy and we want you to be able to pitch and get back into things before we throw you out there into the fire. That all makes sense. How we got here has been bizarre. And Stephen Vogt one day, when asked if Clase was healthy, saying, yeah. Stephen Vogt saying, when asked, should we read into anything, saying no. And then throwing Clase in the 8th inning. So a lot of confusion, a lot of misdirection, gaslighting, whatever you want to call it. But it makes sense. The question I have now is, how do you know when he's ready to go back to the 9th? Like, was one outing when it was, by the way, still high leverage, 8th inning, 1-run game. Not much difference there. He faced 6-7-8 instead of 9-1-2. But that's about it. So is that one outing? Was he like, okay, like you're back, you're ready for it. We'll send you back in the 9th against the Twins. Or like what? It's going to be interesting. Like this is maybe dragged out longer than it needed to, and more dramatically than it needed to. But in the end, it's trying to get Clase right. And this is the path they've taken to do that. You have to make sure he's healthy first. He said he felt soreness in spring training, popped up in San Diego, but he said it wasn't bad enough that he could still pitch through it, didn't really mention it. And then after the outing in Pittsburgh, he's like, all right, I gotta say something. And so they shut him down. But they didn't really tell anyone they were shutting him down until they finally revealed, oh yeah, by the way, he is hurt. And he's going to take it day by day from here.
I mean, I get that, though. I get you don't want to give anything away to the opposition. You don't want to. There's some strategic advantage here. So I get it. I do wonder, in me putting on my cynical hat here, could this be a means to eventually arrive at the way Stephen Vogt has handled Cade Smith before, which was sometimes he pitches the 6th, sometimes he pitches the 8th, but we look at where we're at in the lineup and we try to get the best hitters to face Cade Smith. And so could this be a case where they don't announce who the closer is anymore? And it could just
that's
be
the thing.
If it's
Saturday afternoon, Clase was told he would either get the 7th or the 8th. Okay. The 7th ended up being the heart of the order. He got the 8th. But what if that was different? What if the 7th was 1, 2, 3, and the 8th was 4, 5, 6, and the 9th was 7, 8, 9? Obviously, you can't map out that everybody's going to go 1, 2, 3, but sometimes the 9th inning is lower leverage than the 8th inning. You know, what if in the 8th inning, or what if in the 7th inning, they need Cade Smith because it's bases loaded and nobody out, and they're up by 2? They didn't tell anybody anything except Clase. Cade Smith did not know. He had 3 saves this week. Did not know he was pitching the 9th in any of them ahead of time. And Stephen Vogt said, yeah, there are scenarios where it's going to be Heron or it could have been Gaddis in the 9th, but it was Cade Smith. And by the end of the week, he said, yeah, we didn't know for sure, but because Cade has this experience now, like we're gonna favor him in these situations a little bit more than the other guys.
I love it. I love it. They threw the cover of darkness, got Cade Smith experience in closing, but never put him in a spot where he was nervous about doing it. That actually is pretty awesome. That's some pretty great managerial work.
Does Cade Smith have nerves?
Maybe not. Do robots get nervous? Hold on, let me ask ChatGPT.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like how do you know the perfect time to use someone in a slightly less leveraged situation when you don't know how the game's going to go? And you don't know what the future situations are going to be. It's tricky. And you want to give someone enough time to warm up properly and be in the right headspace to go in because they're coming off an injury and they're coming off of a month of struggles. It's a really weird situation. And I don't know how
everybody's so good and they just handle it.
Yeah. I mean, my guess is that a few months from now, we're going to be like, hey, remember that weird stretch with Clase and when he wasn't pitching well and then he wasn't pitching at all and then he was pitching, but it wasn't the 9th. And like, I'm guessing this will all be a footnote, but as it's happening, it's strange. And the day-to-day developments are odd.
The kind of what I was talking about with having a safety net is why over the years, of course, many years ago, I was thinking, oh, you just put your best guy in the 9th inning, he's your closer. And then over the years, you saw 15, 16, obviously in 16, Andrew Miller's going everywhere and Cody Allen's coming out of the 9th inning. And they say, well, we can do this because we believe in Cody Allen in the 9th inning. But I do think kind of as more years go by, I do see something to that safety net of the 9th inning when there's nobody else behind me. And I think for a manager, the reason why it's hard to just say, well, I'm going to use my best reliever wherever possible. The 9th inning is still a thing that carries weight because when that guy comes in, you've utilized anybody else that would be close to occupying a similar spot in that bullpen to get you to the point to set you up for the ninth inning. And so, while yes, it's easy to just say, put your best reliever anywhere, there's something to just knowing that if Clase struggles in the eighth and there's a couple of guys on, there's still another guy out there that could come in and put out that fire and then maybe occupy the ninth. And so it's why over the years, I've gained more of an appreciation of why the ninth inning is still important. It's not just as simple as anybody can do this. I don't believe that. I think there is something to that role because not necessarily the ninth inning being more important, but because by the time you get to the ninth inning, you've utilized all of your dominoes to get you to that point, and maybe you don't have anybody else that can come save you if you're off on that particular day.
The very best bullpens have excellent performers in both of those roles. You know, everybody talks about Andrew Miller in 2016 ad nauseum and how that revolutionized bullpen usage and how he was the best reliever in the game, and there's no disputing that. But what very few people remember and what Andrew Miller and Terry Francona are always quick to point out is that Cody Allen coming in behind Miller is the reason Miller could be Miller. And people look at Miller's numbers and see what he did, and he won the ALCS MVP. And it's so easy to forget that in that postseason, Cody Allen went 13 2/3, scoreless, did not allow a run, 5 walks, 24 strikeouts. He was just as good as Andrew Miller. He just maybe didn't pitch quite as much, or it was just quieter because he would come in with nobody on. And he went more than an inning a lot too. But Miller's coming in with 2 on and 1 out in the 5th to extinguish a great threat, and then he's going 2 innings. And sometimes Allen would come in the 9th, and there's nobody on base. And sometimes he'd come in the 8th. You had to have both of those guys to get to Game 7 of the World Series. With just one of them, that wouldn't have been possible.
The experience, getting Cade Smith the experience of doing it, though, I think will benefit this team in the long run. And there's probably, we've already seen Joey Cantillo pick up a save so far this year.
Yeah,
the guys that have already gotten saves more than I probably would have signed up for at the beginning of the year.
I think Clase will be fine. I don't think he's going to be 2024 fine once he gets back on course, right? Like,
even if I would have said he had a great year, he's not going to be 2024.
But
good.
I guess my point is that's not a guarantee. He might not be the guy that he was in the past. And so maybe it winds up that Cade Smith is your closer at some point anyway. So I'm with you. It's can't hurt. You know, I also couldn't Hunter Gaddis pitch the 9th?
Sure. I think so.
And you could still use Cade Smith in whatever role you wanted.
Well, that's why I think you're looking ahead to what does this lineup look like? What situation are we in? Or is it the 7th inning and there's 2 guys on base and we're clinging to a 1-run lead? So get me Cade Smith now. I think it just is situation dependent.
Yep. That's why I believe what Stephen Vogt has said. It's just the last week has just been strange in so many ways.
Well, don't you think the fact that it's harder to put the genie back in the bottle to say a guy that's occupying the 9th inning, hey, actually, you know what? You're going to come in and do different things now. You're going to be the 7th inning guy when we need you to put out a fire here and there. And because Cade Smith is already in this role, there's nothing that changes for him. It's just the number on the scoreboard. But he's used to coming in with looming disaster and usually gets out of it pretty well. So because of that, you can utilize that to your advantage now, whereas a normal situation, guys want to have their roles, but nobody's had a role here unless you're talking about Clase. Everybody else has been shifted into be ready from the 4th inning on, and so take advantage of this. Could be the one situation where the bullpen by committee could actually work.
Think about Cade Smith's Monday and Tuesday, right? Monday he comes into the game for the save. There's a base runner. Aaron Judge comes up as the tying run. And look, it's not like Smith labored through that inning by any means, but there's a lot of intensity there, right? And the next night he comes in for the save, and it takes him 4 pitches to get 3 outs. Okay, so I'm sure there are many nights where he's like, "Whew, that was tough. Glad I escaped without giving up a run, or glad I didn't let that guy from third score when I came in with nobody out and our team was up by 1. And then in the closer role, he goes and he's like, wow, that took 90 seconds and I didn't even break a sweat. That was pretty easy. So that's the thing. You never, when you're in, you're right. When you're in the role he's accustomed to, like 9 times out of 10, your night's going to be stressful when you have to pitch. And in the closer role, that's not always the case. You might come in against the bottom of the order up by 3 and it might take you 4 pitches.
We'll wrap things up. Depends on when people are listening to this. You might have already seen this by a couple of days ago. But if you hadn't seen it, we do want to offer a follow-up. So the Guardians put out a statement regarding the fan situation with Duran. I could only see on the broadcast what happened. I know there's a lot of conversation out there that is put out there on X. I don't know for sure what happened. I do know something happened that got under the skin of Duran, and if anything has been said to what has been put out there on X, obviously inexcusable, something you cannot be saying to somebody in any situation, and just because you're a fan, where you're allowed to boo and give it to the other team, obviously crosses a line. This was the statement from the Guardians. We are aware of the situation that took place during today's game between a fan and one of the Red Sox players that violated our fan conduct policy. We recognize the gravity of the behavior at issue here and take very serious conduct of this nature. We apologize to the Red Sox organization, the player involved, fans in the area, and are addressing the situation. We have identified the fan in question and will work with Major League Baseball regarding next step. We strive to provide the best experience to visiting players and fans, and that fell short today. So Guardians putting out the statement there. Again, you and I are not there, but based on what we've been told, not much you can say here to defend any actions there. It's kind of going back to, remember we had the conversation with Miles Straw and Stephen Kwan in New York, and Straw was going after the fan there, and it's an ugly situation all the way around, but that's behavior that just can't happen at the game.
Yeah, Duran opened up about some mental health struggles that he's had in the past, and ahead of the was it a Netflix documentary that's out about the Red Sox season last year. And so Duran said this is the first time since that aired and that he opened up about all this stuff publicly, that he's encountered fan conduct like that. Like he said something like, you're opening yourself up to the enemies, and it crossed the line. And so, yeah, I mean, no place for that. And we'll see what happens with the team. They're working with MLB, and so we'll go from there.
Yeah, hopefully you have some sort of way to check that. Some mics pick something up. Just would rather have some information there before making a choice in some way or shape or form. But obviously not great conduct, not a great situation in an already ugly game that everyone hopefully want to put behind them. And good for the Guardians for at least seeking more information, trying to take care of that. And we'll see what becomes of it.
And now 4 more with the Minnesota Twins. What a long homestand.
Which is weird because the Twins come in, the Guardians having some injury problems. The Twins are the only team that have dealt with injuries ever in the history of time. So how will this play out on the field? Shout out to our guy, Dan Hayes.
I have nothing to add to that.
So you're learning. You are learning, and that's a positive. That's a good thing for you.
Ricky Rubio bobblehead, by the way.